any listeners out there currently in their 20s? And if not, do you remember your 20s? Full of questions and looking to the future, but also trying to stay in the present? I'm Ruth Jo Simons, and this is the GraceLaced podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking with one of my favorite 20-somethings about all the ways young adulthood feels like a now and not yet season of life. Now you get to hear directly from him. So let's get to it. I'm so excited today for you, Caleb, to be joining me on the GraceLaced podcast with Ruth Jo Simons. For all of you who may not know, Caleb is Mancub number one, my oldest, who is 22. And I can't believe I even got you on the podcast. This felt like the ask that you would never say yes to. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Well, to be fair, we are recording this slightly late because I may or may not have forgotten that we were recording it. So very
busy life of a grad student. Here's the thing. Just for a quick context, Caleb is still our podcast engineer. He's the one who edits podcasts. He does all the behind the scenes of the techie things that get this podcast edited and ready to go. But I really wanted him on this conversation because throughout the season of the Now and Not Yet season, we are talking about different ways in which we sometimes feel like we're not exactly where we want to be. Like, it's not that we're complaining. It's not necessarily that we hate everything that's going on, but sometimes we're just in a season where we're saying, I wish I was on the other side of what is happening right now. Sometimes those situations are really hard trials. Sometimes there are moments of suffering, but sometimes they're just things that are hard to get excited about. It's just a season where you really wish that you were on the other side of what you have to deal with day to day right this minute. And, I kind of wanted to put him on the spot because collegiate years, graduate years, he's 22, and I just figured it might be a good conversation to hear from that season of life. You up for it?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell our listeners what kinds of not yet tensions you feel currently in your season of life?
Yeah, where to begin, I suppose. It's like you say, it's not. I would never paint the grad school life as one of like utter suffering. You know what I mean? That would not be. I don't think, an accurate representation. I think what can be more difficult about kind of the stage I'm in is that you can sort of see all of the places that you could end up or that you want to end up. And you have, I think you were telling me the other day, Mama, like the world is somewhat your oyster when you're in this stage of life where it's like, oh my gosh, like there's so many places I could go.
You don't even have a mortgage yet.
Right. I have too much freedom of choice is what I sometimes feel like. It's like there's so many different directions I could go. But inevitably, that means that whatever direction I go, I end up saying no to a whole bunch of other ones. So then, and it's not like I necessarily get to just roll along and feel like I have no decisions to make. There seems like so many all the time. It's like right now it's, so many. It's like, how do I keep going after my master's with a PhD? Do I not? Do I move? Do I not? All sorts of things, you know what I mean? And there's like definitely a sense of not being settled. At really,
would you call that restless, Caleb? Because maybe you should read my book.
You know what? Well, yes.
I'm really eager for you to actually crack open the book. I said to Baba yesterday, I was like, I said, Troy, this book is actually dedicated to you, but we really haven't had much time here for you to hold this book and actually read it. I'd really love for you to actually read this book. And so, full disclosure, I don't think, Caleb, you've actually read the chapters of the book, but you've heard me talk about it so much. And you were actually there to hear me share about it at your home church, even just this past weekend. By the time this airs, it will have been a couple of weeks from this time. But I was just speaking at the women's conference at Caleb's church there in Madison, Wisconsin. And so you got to hear some of this now and not yet message.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it was funny how called out isn't the right word. Just how like seen I felt, I was like, oh my word, Mama's hit that nail directly on the head.
Which part of it? What part of what I shared about now and not yet did you say like, okay, this is my season. This is how I'm feeling?
I think probably that sense that you describe of, and you never say it like outright. This is not the explicit thought pattern. It's more like kind of what's subconsciously going on, is that sense of like, once I get to X, Y, or Z, then I will be happy. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Okay. Do you feel
once I
comfortable
find the right
sharing?
relationship, or once I don't know, get this project done, or once I don't have to do this homework or whatever, then I will feel like I've arrived, quote
Yeah.
unquote. But then it's like,
Uh,
I don't know, where are you going with that? Yeah.
is it putting you too much on the spot to share a few of your like, it doesn't have to be all the personal ones, but what would be like a few, if you could snap your fingers and be like, and this is what I get to choose. Like this is the arrival point where it feels like everything goes together and is perfect. And now I can start living my life. Now I can have my, I call it the good life, capital G, capital L. I say like the good life is like just a step ahead of me. And so, what is the idea of the good life to Caleb Simons? And what makes you think that, like, what is it that causes you to go, oh, if I just get there, everything will be the way I want it? Can you share a few of those?
Well, maybe one of the more shallow ones, I suppose, is with all due respect to Madison, Wisconsin. I think there's a part of me that's like, if I can just get to the mountains, let's say, or
You're a
get
mountain
to
boy. Yeah.
get to a point where like I wake up and I see the sunrise. I miss being in Colorado and watching our sunrises, which
Mhm.
are lovely, and there's nothing, I've never said don't want that. But certainly it's like, if I just get to the point where when I wake up in the morning, I'm happy with literally the location that I'm in. I don't know why I'm so
Hmm.
dependent on it.
Hmm.
But it certainly is that kind of thing where it's like, I just want to, I feel like all will be better. I could deal with the job, I could deal with everything if, quote unquote, I was
Hmm.
waking up, you know, in the morning in a place that I just really want to be in. Um, that's certainly been a big one. Um, the grad school life, the meme is that you just never stop working, and it is somewhat accurate, I suppose. Like, and I think there is part of me that's like, if I just get to the point where I can work my 9 to 5 and
Mm,
hang up the boots at the end of the day and be done, then I will not have to fight the mental fight of
mm.
not letting that overtake me, like in my constant thoughts. I always joke that like there comes a point in every semester where I start dreaming about homework problems and about whatever thing I'm trying to solve. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just
That
I
sounds
can always
miserable, honey.
feel it growing. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
I
my
can feel it
goodness.
growing all the time of like, I am about to get to that point where like it just envelops me. You know what I mean? And I
Mm,
can't stop thinking about it. And I certainly, one aspect of like, if I can just get there is,
mhm.
if I can just get to a point where, let's say, the job and the problems are kind of on autopilot, which is, I know saying that that's a fool's errand. You know what I mean? You know that that's not where you get in life. And yet
Yeah.
I can say that super rationally here, saying, yeah, I know that. But then I walk through a whole lot of days thinking like that and acting like that, um,
Yeah.
is going to be a future reality.
Also, you're a major like adrenaline junkie and you love adventure. You love to do things that require speed and a whole day of like hard, like tackling something really tough. And you just love doing stuff. And so I've heard you say things like, if I could just, and usually it's something like go on a long mountain bike ride or take my dirt bike out or hike for days. There's something
Mm-hmm.
that, and it's not wrong, right? It's not wrong to long for those things. It's not wrong if you're made for adventure or you want to spend some time outside. Nobody should be inside a cubicle or under fluorescent lights for days and days and days. Like, no, being outside is great. But do you still wrestle with some of those feelings sometimes?
Oh yeah, 100%. To be fair, I've always sort of struggled with that in the wintertime because I'm not a winter sports guy. But I
Mhm.
always I always can tell between February and March, so like we're literally, when we're recording this, it's hitting like peak, where I can't seem to get out of my head. And to be fair, then one of the few ways that I've ever figured out how to do that is to go ride a bike, and
Yeah.
be be kind of in that flow state and have the adrenaline pumping and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it certainly is this like, I just I am super reliant on those things. And you kind of realize in seasons like I'm in where it's like, well, can't exactly go biking in Wisconsin in the winter. News alert. You know what I mean? And then you realize, oh wow, like that's one of these things that I turn to and lean on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
To deal with maybe deeper things going on.
So I remember when you were still living at home, finishing up your last semester of college, that you were wrestling with some of these things of like, how do I discern whether this is a healthy longing, or is this turning into something where I feel like I have to put my happiness on hold until I get to, if it starts turning to that, that doesn't seem very healthy. How did you start discerning and what did you do about it?
Oh, I've somewhat tough question to answer because I feel like I'm very much still in the middle of it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I think that one thing that I just try and remember is that, well, okay, maybe off the top, moderation is a nice benchmark. You know what I mean? I tend to think that most things are probably not a problem. It's when you completely go all in on like this is the solution. This is the only thing that will possibly, I don't think I would ever really say that going for a bike ride is somehow not good. It's when the bike ride is the only solution to all of my problems, or
Hmm.
without it, I'm a complete mess, which has been the case before. It's not, I don't think that's
Hmm.
hyperbole to say like I've gotten to that point before. So
But
there's
that
that
could
sense
be
of like,
said of like exercise, or, somebody could feel that way about exercise, that can feel that way about eating right, or having just certain things where it's like, I will only be happy or feel like everything's right with the world if I get these things in my day.
and not to not to wax poetic too much about dirt bikes, but or mountain bikes, but but for me, the thing about it, that what it's not just that it's fun to ride bikes. It is, but for me, I've always said it's that my sense of time and me thinking about problems, which is what I do. I'm an engineer. That stops when I ride bikes, and that's why I love it so much. Like beyond just the adrenaline, it's that when I'm riding, don't know what time it is,
Hmm.
am not thinking about my next homework that's due, and it gets me out of that. You know what I mean? That's maybe the good side of it. The dark side of it is that it's like I have to like forcibly, I have to distract my mind from all of these things that are important slash need to be managed, in my mind. And like sometimes the only way I can do that is to go out and, you know, ride a bike. You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit of that, like you can't just get to a point where you have to ignore those things. You know what I mean? Um, and not actually look them in the eye and figure out what you're going to do about it.
Well, I'm nodding as if I understand, but I don't ride mountain bikes and I don't relate to those things. And I will just say, in case you don't know, that the vast majority of our listeners are probably female. You know, hello to shout out to any of our brothers and gentlemen who are listening in. And I'm sure they're like, yeah, mountain bikes, or yeah, wilderness. Absolutely. But I mean, I'm sure some of our ladies are into mountain bikes as well. But, when I hear you say that, Caleb, I think about when I was your age, I think about my early 20s, and that, when I was graduating college and going off to seminary and kind of thinking through, what is my life going to be about? And I think for a lot of, and we don't need to get super personal here, but the reality is, for most people around your season of life, there is this huge question of, who am I going to spend the rest of my life with? How am I supposed to travel all over the world? Do I travel all over the world? Do I do that alone? Do I do that with someone else? Do I start a family at this age, or do I wait and start a family at another age? You see, there's a lot of big questions that start involving um, what my life will look like in time. And that someday feels so far away, and yet kind of like, but what I do today kind of matters. Like how I decide to, you know, grow in Christ will affect whether I have a godly relationship with my spouse, where I spend my time, who I make friends with. That will affect who I end up dating and how I end up having relationships in my life. And so I even think about how for some of our listeners, and I hope we have some college gals here. I hope we have some college students here. But even if we have some early 20s who are in school or not, I think I think you are living what I was hoping we would kind of just tap into a little bit, that in between stage, that place where you're like, I'm so ready to get my life started. I want to go. I want to go places. I want to do things. I also want to do that with somebody. And am I supposed to start a family? And should I really plan for the future? And what should I do? And how do I do those things? And how does my career affect those things? I remember being in college as a pre-med student at one point going, okay, so if I really want to go into medicine, how many years does that require? And how does that affect my hopes and dreams for other areas of my life with artistic things, creativity things, entrepreneurial things, as well as how I feel about being a wife and a mom. And so it just compounds to be a lot of things to consider. And so, what would you say for your peer or for somebody who is just graduating college? What would you say is like helps get you out of that like overthinking, overanalyzing, freaking out about every decision you make? What what would be, I don't want to tell you it's like three things because I don't know how many there are, but what would you boil that down to? Like what would you say are two or three things that you focus on every day where you're like, okay, I can be faithful now. I can start right where I am. I don't have to feel like, someday is the only thing I'm living for, that I can start right now. What would you
Yeah.
do? What would you tell somebody younger than you?
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. Number one, I would say over the, especially since moving here, have managed to find a couple like godly men for me at church who every time I go talk to them,
Hmm.
have breakfast, get dinner, something like that, you're like, oh yeah, because they speak, they've done it. They've gone down,
Hmm.
they are, between 10 and probably 20 years ahead of me, you know what I mean? If not more at times. And it's like, they maybe don't know exactly how I feel right now because it's been a while, but they have walked all the same paths that I am walking and am about to walk.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
every time, it's try and, I would say, if you can find someone who's willing to pour into you like that, to be honest and open with them and say, these are the things that I'm every week. It's something new when I go meet with one of these guys. It's like thinking about this, thinking about that. I don't know what to think about this. Trying to figure out what that looks like. And practical wisdom sometimes is just it's so helpful. You know what I mean? So doing it, I would say, taking those questions to people who may be in a similar spot or much further down the line and can speak into it has been something that I've really um, had a sense for a while that I needed, but then managing to find some of it and pursuing that with
Hmm.
people has been extremely helpful. I would say from a philosophy standpoint, I suppose, or maybe theology. I, I think that for me at least, when I'm sitting there and it's like I have to figure out all of life right now, and it's that
Hmm.
that overwhelming sense of this decision I make could have implications 30 years down the line, let's say, which who knows, you know what I mean? But
I wonder where you
that's the
get
sense
that
I
from.
have for sure. Yeah, I can't imagine. I can't imagine at all. But I think what's going on there for me at least is I'm putting myself in a position that is the Lord's to take.
Hmm.
I'm saying I have to make sure that I get to whatever place in the end.
Yeah.
When I know, but I still have to be told that if I get to that place, it will be because the Lord took me there. It
Hmm.
it won't be because I was clever, because I worked hard. The Lord can use that, but that's not what makes it happen. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
The Lord, if I'm a diligent, faithful steward of what the Lord gives me, and I end up in A, B, or C place, it will be because the Lord planned and guided me to that point. Um, and so when I sit there and am and want to be overwhelmed by all of the the sense of like, I got to figure out where I'm going. It is at the end of the day coming back to that recognition of I am in Christ, and if I were to die in the next 5 seconds, I know where I'm going to end up. And I
Mm-hmm.
know, and I have that assurance that ultimately makes all other things fall into submission to it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know that. That's 100% the primary assurance. And then from there, knowing that, I remember telling Baba kind of early on, I had this moment where I was like walking to my office late, like later than anyone wants to be on campus. You know what I mean? It's dark in the hallway. And I was like, I just had this strong sense of like, the Lord, the Lord's spirit is within me, and the Lord is watching over me as I walk down this dark hallway to the office that I don't want to go to work on stuff that it probably was pretty boring. I don't even know what it was. But just that sense of like, the Lord is watching over me right now. And every step that I take, be it one that like I think is in my own, cleverness or planning out or working really hard to get where I want to go, the Lord is the one who guides those things. And if you lose sleep over how it's all going to work out and whatnot, not only are you doing yourself you're needlessly losing that sleep, but you're also putting yourself in a position to say, no, I understand, Lord, that you're omnipotent and omniscient, and you have my best in my best in mind, but I'll take it from here. It's kind of what you're doing. You know what I mean? You're saying, I will just,
Yeah.
I'll grab for me, it's always, I will be more disciplined. I will be more clever, and I will grit my teeth harder, and I will just get there. That's always what it is for me. And it's just not going to work. You know what I mean? It's not what the Lord calls us to. And it's no way to live your life, because it never works out to try and be God in your life.
Yeah. That's it. If you're a parent like me, you hope that your children will grow up to develop an unshakable faith, to follow Jesus and live out his call on their lives in a way that brings glory to God. But you also know that our kids live in a world that can be challenging to follow Christ faithfully, which is why Summit Ministries is such a great resource. Here's how one mom described her kids' experience. I'm not capable of teaching my kids all the things they learn at Summit. I homeschool them and we read a lot of great books together, but nothing compares to what they've internalized after attending Summit. Summit takes the best of the best speakers and they plan each session in such a way that the kids can get the most out of it. That means having downtime, having fun activities, good food, thoughtful dialogue, access to speakers, staff connection, all of it. I'm sending 3 of the Simon's Mancubs to Summit as soon as our schedule allows, hopefully next summer, and I'm so excited for them. If you have a child between the ages of 16 and 22, send them to a 2-week Summit experience in Colorado or Georgia this summer. Learn more and register at summit.org/GraceLaced and save $200 off the cost with the code RUTH24. That's RUTH 24. In the book, I have a chapter. It's pretty much towards the end, and I'm talking about how God's people were in exile. They were in Babylon. They were in a place that they didn't want to be. We're not making some big comparison. Grad school is not Babylon. You're not in some place that you don't want to be. You chose to be there. You love Madison, Wisconsin. You love the people you're with. So that's not the comparison. But when we're in a season where you're like, hey, this is not everything I want it to be. I kind of would like to be done with this season. So in Jeremiah, I'm recounting how in Jeremiah 29, we love that verse, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and all those things. And we a lot of well-meaning, you know, Christian memes go up or little pictures of, hey, this is a great verse to claim. But that verse and that was spoken through the prophet at a time where God was basically saying, you're going to be here in this place you don't really want to be for a long, long time, like a lot longer than you want to be. And so his instructions, if you read in Jeremiah 29, is to literally start where you are. It was to get married and have kids and plant gardens. And this is not prescriptive. Like when I look at this section of scripture, I'm not saying, wow, the answer for all of us in our now and not yet is that we have to go have a bunch of children and plant a garden. I mean, wouldn't it be easy if everything was just so prescriptive that we know like one, two, three? But the idea was to invest where you are. The idea was to like not wait. So the idea of starting a family and get roots planted, even if you're not going to be there forever. The idea that you would plant a garden so that it would become fruitful, that your time spent there, the soil that you cultivate there, that it would be fruitful and that it would actually end up being something that would benefit yourself and others, right? That's what a garden does. A garden actually becomes the very thing that supplies the neighbors and those in your community. And then to seek the welfare of the city that you're in. And when I think about that, I think about how those are really practical instructions that God was ultimately giving through the prophet to remind his people that just because you're not where you want to be doesn't mean you shouldn't invest deeply and start where you are and consider how your very presence in the place that God, in his sovereignty, like you said, placed you is purposeful. That he intentionally chose to plop you right where you are. And right now I'm looking at you and you're down in the basement of grad school engineering building, whatever it is. And we've been hearing a few little sounds in the background. And so if listeners hear any of that sound, it's all the real nerdy stuff happening behind you, I'm sure. But the point just being on the days when things are going really great and when Madison, Wisconsin, when spring is all abloom, I'm sure things are going to feel real bright and chipper. But there are some days where you're going to be like, this problem that I'm working on, well, seems like it'll never end. I really miss my family. I just would love to be in my beloved mountains. I miss my mountain bike or whatever it is that you feel like, I'm ready for this to end. I think we can take the instructions from Jeremiah 29 and consider how we can start right where we are. And so one of the questions I just want to end with is, can you share a few rhythms? I mean, I think about whether you're actively doing your version of Jeremiah 29 intentionally because of Jeremiah 29 or not. I know you're doing those things, Caleb. I hear you. I talk about them with you. I know that you're investing. You joined a church there. You're ministering in the 3 and 4 year olds department at church. You're serving there. Um, you're encouraging and building others up. You're ministering alongside other people, and you're not just being temporarily there. You're investing. But what are some rhythms that you would encourage? It doesn't matter if they're younger or older than you, but just anyone in that kind of situation. What are three things that impact your day? What are three rhythms that I keep giving you three, but I just mean whatever it is? What are some rhythms in your life that you would say are kind of non negotiables that help you start where you are and stay rooted exactly where God's planted you?
That's well. Let me just say that Jeremiah 29. That's good. That's I feel I have been trying to formulate like that what you just articulated, that like philosophy of what am I doing here? You know what I mean?
Mm.
I've been trying to formulate that, and I think you just took care of it for me. So when we
There's a
edit
whole
this podcast,
chapter.
I'm gonna
There's a whole
snip that.
chapter.
It's true. Well, the only copy of your book that currently is within my circles is in North Carolina right now. It will be back
Can't wait
soon,
for you to read it.
and
Can't wait for you
will
to
be
read it.
read forthwith. Um, but anyway, thank you for boxing that
Mhm.
up so nicely.
You know where
Um,
to find me. You
yeah,
know where to find me. I can
yeah,
say it all to you again and encourage you with all of
hmm
that. But
yes. I happen to have your number, which is nice. Um, as far as rhythms, I wish that I could say that this was. I wish that this wasn't. You always want to be stronger in this, so I wish that this wasn't like a mind blowing thing to me. But I am always, always just shocked. Just straight up, I'm shocked at what it is like when I start my day in prayer. And I
hmm,
wish that that was something you. What I want to say is, oh yeah, I'm great at prayer. You know what I
hmm,
mean? It's like a natural. It's like breathing. But honestly, that is something that is not. And it's something that I actually have to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to take the time. I could go make breakfast right now, but I'm going to take the time to pray. And, the, I think really since the new year, one of the number one things I've been asking the Lord just over and over and over is to help me to be a faithful and diligent steward of the things that He's given me. I remember reading in Timothy at the beginning of the year about how all things are a gift from the Lord, and trying to remember too that when something is given as a gift, you can never let the gift outgrow the person who gave it to you. So if the Lord gives me grad school, and it is a gift, I mean, I moan and complain about how hard it is. At the end of the day, it's a tremendous blessing, no doubt. And if I let that outgrow the one who gave it to me, I've got it completely out of whack. So I've just been, the number one thing for me is pray, because we know that the Lord already knows every request that I could bring to Him. He knows actually what I need. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't even know what to pray to Him. But prayer is very much so a recentering of where my life fits under God's power. And it's me saying at the beginning of every day, Lord, I know that You are guiding my steps. I know that You have a plan for me. And please help me to follow that diligently and to seek after it. So often I think it's my my affections and what I want get completely out of step with what the Lord wants. You know what I mean? And so it's that every morning, just asking for his power and his guiding hand through my day. I think I think the other thing for me that's been pretty strong and helpful is to read and to, quite frankly, to go read some older stuff. You know what I mean? And to go and study wise people who have thought deeply about what life is about, who have looked at the scriptures, looked at the world around them, and who have walked a lot of miles. Honestly, and this is, I mean, it was Abolition of Man that I read over Christmas break, C.S. Lewis. It's not a spiritual book. It's not, C.S. Lewis has amazing books on Christianity, but Abolition of Man is honestly about, it's a deep dive into the most fundamental ways that we think and the ways that, he argues it somewhat implicitly. He argues it to probably a secular audience, but he argues that at the end of the day, there's deep truths that God has put in each of our hearts that you can't completely, that you can never quite escape, and that we really need to be cognizant of. So anyway, that's just one, but reading that blew my mind. It blew my mind. And I find that you go and you read those older guys who have been down there and know what it's like. It's like talking to people in your during the week, you know what I mean, but in a different way.
Honey, I'm so grateful to even hear you articulate these things. I think as your mom, I obviously know the depth at which you think and steward your days and how much you love the Lord. And I'm just really grateful that you're willing to share these things with this audience, because I think that's a sign of even just maturity when we're ready to share what God's given us to bless others. And so I know it's vulnerable, and it's kind of, you're not a very public person. You're not like me. You're not, actively on social media. And so it's a big deal that you decided to come and join me on this conversation. And my prayer is that this very conversation will bless so many and will help someone else in their not yet season know where to begin and how to even prioritize something like praying and reading strategically to help inform and realign their hearts with what's the truth about what's going on in their right now season. So thank you, honey,
Absolutely.
for joining me today. I miss you so much as I was looking at you on screen, but can't wait to hug your neck very, very soon. Thanks for joining me today.
Very much look forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Conversations like this one with Caleb are the reason you see me post about raising kids that become your best friends. He really is the best. In this episode, we also have a short bonus conversation with Dr. Jeff Myers, the president of Summit Ministries. Summit is sponsoring this season of the podcast, and I'm so happy you get to hear from him. Summit Ministries desires to see generations of Christians mobilized to transform a broken world, and their mission is to equip and support rising generations to embrace God's truth and champion a biblical worldview. Here's my conversation with Dr. Jeff Myers. Friends, I'm so excited to be sitting down with Jeff Myers with Summit Ministries today with this conversation that we've been having about the young adult season of not being quite where they want to be, where they're not sure that where they're headed in life, but they're needing to press in right now in their current season, whether it's in school or in work or just learning to grow in their relationship with the Lord. There's a lot to do right now in our right now season for young adults as they are anticipating all that God has planned for them. So I am excited to be talking with Jeff. Thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
Hey, Ruth, I'm looking forward to our conversation. I love this topic.
Yeah, I know your heart is for young adults. Your heart is for them to have a true worldview that is biblical. So please share the work that you do with Summit Ministries.
Well, our core mission is to equip and support the rising generation to embrace God's truth and to
Hmm.
champion a biblical worldview in every area of life. What we observe with young adults today is, well, 75%, according to one survey, say they don't have a sense of purpose that gives
Wow.
meaning to their lives.
Wow.
3 out of 4. So when you meet someone who
Mm,
says, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life, oh, that's most people. And I
yeah.
get that. I understand that. I remember feeling that tension when I was a young adult.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, for a lot of young people who've grown up with a faith influence, they start to think, I don't, we never talk about this in church. And so
Hmm.
it must not really
Hmm.
be important. Church seems to be kind of like an add on to life rather
Yeah.
than a starting point from which to view everything else. So
Yes.
70% of young adults who are significantly involved in church in their high school years are no longer even attending church by the time they reach their mid 20s.
Hmm.
It is it's a tragedy. And it isn't just a tragedy because it's not like, oh, well, we have a club and we lost a member. You
Hmm.
know, it's like, no, if from a biblical worldview is if a biblical worldview is the standpoint from which we see reality as it really is,
Right.
then to reject your faith is to actually reject reality. And
Hmm.
Jesus said in John 8:32, if you follow my teachings, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That word truth, by the way, is the
Yeah.
word aletheia in Greek. It means reality. You follow
Mm,
my
so
teachings,
good.
Jesus said, you will
Yeah.
know reality and you will be set free. What does it mean to be, what do you need to be set free from? What do you wish you could be set free to do?
Jeff, I think what breaks my heart is when I see young people reject the Christian faith when they actually haven't been given the actual truth of who Jesus is really. And so, Troy likes to say, my husband Troy likes to say, if any of our boys ever walk away from what it is that we try to instill in them and help them understand of the gospel, they would have to really walk away from the actual gospel. His goal is like if they leave our home not knowing the truth of the gospel, then they would probably easily reject something that isn't even the real thing. And so, I think when you read off those statistics and you share some of those findings, I think about how um, even some of those things have probably, as your team researches and looks at the data, a lot of it has probably even gotten worse over the rise of social media and just in the last several years, even since COVID, when there's so much online life happening, so many people working remotely and spending so much time on life and online. And when we look at our young people doing the majority of their lives connected to a device and
Hmm.
getting all their information through TikTok, right? If that's they're really their news source and where they're understanding what to think and believe, then we're really fighting a battle of where they're actually getting the source of truth, right?
There's so much to that. A consistent human problem is confirmation bias.
Mm,
We decide we are the center of reality, and then we start looking for confirming evidence.
hmm
Unfortunately, in the world of social media, it's much easier than ever to find confirming evidence that we are, in fact, the center of reality, and we should be narcissistic and only care
Right,
about ourselves.
right.
In fact, the social media algorithms are built around that. If you're really upset or angry about a certain issue
hmm
and you search for an
hmm
article on it, the
Yep.
algorithms will give you all the articles about it. And all of a sudden, you become just madder than you've ever been.
Right. In
Well,
fact, if you are kind of asking questions and deconstructing in your faith, you're going to be fed a ton of people who are telling you absolutely, like there's nothing to believe here, and everything you've ever been taught is wrong. And I'm shocked, but also fascinated with the fact that the algorithm will really keep feeding you exactly what you said, the very thing that you you're struggling with. They will keep giving you more and more to help feed that.
right, yes. And there are non-important ways, so, non-threatening ways. If I want to watch videos of French bulldog puppies, I can search for one, and
Right.
then I get to watch as many French bulldog puppy videos as I can handle. But when it comes to things like deconstruction or even gender insecurity,
Mm-hmm.
when you start looking for things that confirm how you're feeling about it, rather
Right.
than asking questions about how to see the truth in a situation, then you're in trouble. This would not be a problem if we lived in a culture where people were truth seekers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, now I'm looking out at the Rocky Mountains on the other side of the camera here. I wish you could see it. It's a beautiful view. Pike National Forest, it's 1,000,000 acres of pristine
Yep.
wilderness. You better not go out there without a compass and a
Mm-hmm.
topographical map
Right.
because but you don't want the compass because it's comforting to have the red needle pointing toward you. You take a compass because it points
Mm,
toward a truth that is outside of you, magnetic
mhm,
north, which is reliable enough that you can find yourself within a few meters of wherever you are in that wilderness area. You won't be lost. But if you're only focused on yourself and how you feel, you'll always be lost.
mm, mhm,
That's a key thing to understand. If we had strong moral compasses, strong truth compasses, then all of these things happening in social media wouldn't bother us.
So how do you and Summit Ministries, how do you help young people, help the next generation combat these all these questions and all these seemingly impossible topics that nobody seems to want to engage in, but you all are willing to reach these young adults and help them in the most critical time, and I'm even calling that kind of a now and not yet kind of time in their lives where it's like, okay, well, now I'm kind of a young adult, but I'm not yet where I need to be, so what do I do in the meantime? And you all step in and during that season and really pursue them.
I appreciate the way you describe it as a season. That's really meaningful. There are a few points in our lives where we're uncertain about what to do next and
Hmm.
we're open. Young adulthood is one of those. You're transitioning from high school to college. This is a scary thing, or maybe it's super exciting, but I just don't know what it's going to involve. People's
Hmm.
hearts are open. When people graduate from college, their hearts are open. When people get married, their hearts are open. If people get
Right.
divorced, their hearts are open. Those big life changing moments that give us an opportunity. And so we choose 16 to 22-year olds. They come to study with us for 11 days in either Manitou Springs, Colorado or Lookout Mountain, Georgia, and we bring to them the top Christian thought leaders in apologetics, economics, theology, philosophy, all the different
Mm,
things that they will be facing when they go to school, to teach
yeah,
them from a biblical worldview and then to help them learn to dialogue. So we first just ask them, bring all your tough questions with you.
that's so good.
We want you to know. In fact, the most popular time of our program is not the lecture time where the instructors speak on things, but the open forum time where they just sit and all the students sit around them and they
Oh,
can
so
ask
good.
whatever question they want.
Wow, Jeff,
And they
that
realize,
is so neat.
yeah, these people
Yeah.
are not afraid of questions. We want
Yeah.
your questions. It's not just then about finding the answers. It's the reality that, oh, I've met some Christians who aren't afraid.
Yeah. Oh, so
They
good.
they they engage. They don't try to escape. And then we try to help them understand a biblical worldview. So, what is scripture? How do we know that it's from God? How do we know that it's reliable? Why should it have authority in our lives? And how do we actually read and understand it well? And then how does that apply to not just to theology, but philosophy, ethics, biology, psychology, sociology, law, politics, economics, history, 10 different areas that we work on. And then here's the really controversial thing, Ruth. We help the students understand the counterfeit worldviews that seek
Mm,
to overthrow a biblical worldview.
that's so good.
Once they get that, then they can learn to dialogue. How do you communicate about the truth, even with people who don't believe?
That's so good. And you see, I think when I hear you say that, I go, okay, this is something we have to intentionally pursue. It's not going to just automatically happen. Even kids who are growing up in a Christian home, they may not have an intensive time to really engage in how do I actually articulate my faith? How do I articulate a loving answer when somebody's coming at me with a whole lot that I don't agree with? These are things that I, even as a, late 40s mom, I'm not going to just naturally have the ability to engage those conversations and engage the world without spending some time thinking about it, studying it, practicing it, engaging in rehearsing the kinds of loving answers that don't, cause me to feel like I don't even know where to start, but to actually say, okay, this is a good starting point for conversation. That takes intentionality. And I think what you're describing um, is an intentionality that Summit makes available so that in this particular really um, ripe season of life for a young person, that they can at this critical time take the time to engage in the things that will transform the rest of their lives. So there are
Yes.
two
Yeah. And to
opportunities every
do that
summer,
in the
right?
no, I was just going to say, do that in the context of community. That's a
Yes,
significant part of
yes,
it. You
right.
could take
And
all
not
the
just
topics
taking
that
a
we talk about at
course,
Summit and just watch YouTube
Mm-hmm.
videos, but you will
Yes.
never, it will never transform you. Doing it in the context of other people who are like minded seekers of truth seems to be the thing that really lights it up.
And who are wise and are godly mentors who you can trust that are biblically grounded, who will turn you back to the word of God and not just to their own
Yes.
ideas. Because it's not just a dialogue based on somebody's thoughts and feelings. It's going back to the word of God. And I so appreciate that you all are so rooted biblically and are so careful to handle God's word with such care. We've already been telling our audience this whole season. But those two opportunities, I would love for you to remind the audience again of those two opportunities because you all were so gracious to give my listeners a coupon code. The code is Ruth24 for $200 off for this experience, this opportunity for young people. But share with them once again how to learn more about these two opportunities and why they should take advantage of this.
You can go to summit.org to see the events that we're holding this summer. So it'll be 9 different 11-day sessions all throughout the summer. It can accommodate most summer schedules.
Oh,
And
there's
those
9 of them.
2
It's 2 locations. I'm
9,
sorry. Yes,
2
I misspoke. So
locations,
it's not
yes.
2 opportunities, it's 9 different opportunities, 2 different locations. Yes.
Actually, and there's a 10th opportunity, which is a virtual 1-week program.
Oh
That
my goodness.
program
Okay.
is available for people, people who are in different countries, people who have some kind of a disability people who have a scheduling conflict.
Mhm.
They can join there. All of that is at summit.org. But the 2 locations they're beautiful mountain locations. One is in Manitou
Mhm.
Springs, Colorado, which is right at the foot of Pikes Peak. The other one is Lookout Mountain, Georgia, which overlooks Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the Tennessee Valley. That
Amazing.
is a beautiful. They're both great locations, and in those 11 days, students will get together with. Depends on the size of the venue. Here in Colorado, it's about 180 students at a time. In Georgia, it's about 300. But then they have small groups. We have one instructor or mentor there for about every 5 or 6 students, so it's very personal. And they have the opportunity to ask all their questions. be with people who are their age. The 22-year-olds are with 22-year-olds, and 16-year-olds are with
Yes.
16-year-olds. Then they can learn, they can grow. We do a lot of things in classes. We do a lot of the outdoor things as well, hiking,
Hmm.
sports, whitewater rafting, rock climbing, zip lines, things like that.
So fun. What a dream to be able to take that 11 days to grow in friendship, grow in your love for the Lord, grow in your ability to engage in the world that you're about to, you know, start a life as an adult in, and to make lasting memories for a lifetime. So, yes. So, listeners, if you know somebody in that age group who could really benefit from that kind of mentoring and that kind of investment in their lives from godly people who are so eager to encourage them, please visit summit.org and take advantage of this $200 off coupon code that they've offered GraceLaced listeners. That's Ruth24 to participate and get $200 off your registration for this summer. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing more about the wonderful work that you all are doing at Summit. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Ruth. I love the topic, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to weigh in. And I do believe that it is not inevitable that our children
Mhm.
walk away from the truth. We can help them walk toward it.
Amen. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. If you're enjoying this season so far, we'd love for you to write a review and share it with a friend. And if you're sharing it online, make sure you tag me at Ruth Jo Simons on Instagram so I can see what you have to say.